I forgot my water. It's okay though. So today we are talking about having spiritual gifts and what that's like. For me, some people say, we ask like we come down here with a mission and we, ask for certain stuff when we come down here, and we're naturally we're figuring it out. And for me, let me see what turn this up a little bit. For me, I don't. Man, my life has been, if interesting is a word, but it's just been like on the spiritual side. It's really and truly, it's been extraordinary. It's almost like, yeah, guess I'm wearing this shirt for a reason. Like little baby Yoda. Because we have these gifts, and people people use them for different reasons. And people are on different sides of the fence. And it's it's like being in the world. It's like being in the world. It's like being a believer, and then being in the world of make believe. But like, is it easy? I would say it's probably easier for some than others. Because sometimes when you do have these spiritual gifts, especially like when it comes from family and stuff like that, kind of come to judgment. You may be ostracized. You may be, people say the whatever sheep of the family. They're like, oh well, they were always different, and blah blah blah, and one, one thing with a lot of people, not stuff doesn't really make sense. Like if you're the person in your family and you say, oh, college isn't for me. I'm going to go and be a street magician, or just I don't know. Or, you may say, I'm going to go and be a dancer, or I'm going to go travel Europe or backpack across Europe. It, if anytime you have a different mindset, you're on a very very much so. You're on a very much so totally different wavelength, and a lot of times when you have a very strong and different mindset, it's almost like bucking the system. It's in This is your first time watching Mr. Soul of a Man, welcome, and give me some thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. So today we are talking about spiritual gifts, and so yeah, so you know and yeah, so like if you have if you have a different kind of a mindset, sometimes people are going to label you as different. They may label you as a threat, so to speak. And a lot of it, when you have these different spiritual gifts, and um, that journey can be very exciting. It can be very very polarizing. Because you see a lot of people on social media nowadays. One thing in it is that you know that you're not alone. Whether you be somebody who says, well, hey, I am uh, whatever you call yourself. You're Claire this, Claire that, a prophet, a psychic, an oracle. It's very interesting. Hey, how are you? It's very 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 interesting. The life and the life and the livelihood that you can live. It's like, for me, I have so many. I have so many different stories and so many things that I have naturally been through, and the things that I have seen and I've experienced, and the different stories that I've heard, just from people personally, and people who have these gifts, and some people who have been committed to psychiatric wards. because they said, oh, well, this person is crazy. You know, anytime, like I said, when you buck the system, you're going to be labeled as something different. But these people are just special. They're unique. They're a lot of times they're when you get a package and it says fragile, handled with care. A lot of times those people needs to be handled with care. And they'll um, the life that they live isn't easy. Like you try to walk through their shoes. It's really cool to watch movies and to see people that have superpowers and all of this stuff, and people that can read minds and do all of these amazing magical things, until you start to see these things for yourself, till you start to feel things for yourself. Imagine you being able to walk around, read people's minds, feel their emotions, see what's going to happen to people, in the future, or if you have dreams. It's so many different things. It's so many. Hey, how are you? I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for asking. So, it's so many different ways that your spiritual journey can go. So many different ways. But one thing that I find that is that you have to be like you almost have to be a kid playing with, like, I don't know, crayons or whatever, using your wildest imaginations. We're talking about spiritual gifts. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about today. Yeah. So just you have to be able to use, like, your wildest imagination, so to speak, because and the sense of it, again, you're special, you're unique, you're how you use it, and how you see, feel, how things shape, in your life, or whatever, that's going to be specifically unique to you. And don't forget to subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. So just know that your spiritual journey is going to be one of it's going to be one of one. Of course, you can look at other people's journeys, and hear their thoughts, and their experiences, and all of that good stuff. And and all of that stuff. But the the amazing thing is that how the picture continues to unfold, and how you continue, how you continue to view. Oh, cool. Well, thank you for subscribing. And and how you continue to view it. Sometimes it's like, man, look, let me off of this ride. Like, seriously, I've seen enough. I've experienced enough. Like, no more. Like, no mas, no more. Like, really and truly, it is like it is a wild ride, but it is one that I could for me, this is just me, I could say that I wouldn't um I wouldn't want to get off this ride, for me personally, because it's 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 something that sets you worlds apart. It's really and truly something that sets you worlds apart from people. I remember, and I remember 2016. I was working this. I remember 2016. I was working this particular job. It was at the call center, and um, it was a real toxic place. But long story shorter, I remember going in there, and I wasn't particularly liked at this place, and I knew it, and I didn't really care, But when one day I walked in the building, and I got upstairs, and I walked into the floor, when I walked in, it felt like, I don't know. It's if you ever watch those movies with the um, you ever and thank you for the hearts. If you ever watch those movies and you see like the ocean just kind of going like that, that's how it was for me. It was like a way. It was like this big tidal wave. There you go. It was a big tidal wave of emotions just coming at me like all at once. And for and I it was it felt like I was it felt like I was drowning because I was feeling people's feelings and thoughts and their emotions. And this is, again, this, if you want to talk about throwing somebody into the deep end, that was it for me. Like really and truly. And the beautiful thing is that sometimes, when you might like, I used to, like, once upon a time, I used to do like tarot, oracle, all that stuff, and that was just part of my journey. And I would tell people stuff, um like, hey, this is going to happen to you, this is going to happen, blah blah blah. They would ask certain questions, whatever whatever. And so, it was like, and it could be like weeks, months, years later, they would come back and say, hey, remember when you said this and that, and me and this guy wasn't gonna, and and whatever whatever. And I'll be like, yeah, I mean, vaguely, unless I had it written down somewhere. But they would vaguely come back and say, hey, blah blah blah. Yeah, well, man, that stuff actually happened. That stuff actually came to pass. So, um, for me, yeah. What is that saying? It's, what is it? It's not what they call you, but oh, thank you. People say, it's not what they call. It's not what they call you, but what you answer to. Now I've been called, not in bad ways, but I've been called a plethora of things on this spiritual journey. I really, really, really have, and I've met some, man. I've met some amazing people. One thing about your journey, it's almost like catching a bus. Some people are gonna come in at certain times. Some people are gonna leave at certain times. That, and that's just it. And sometimes it's it can be lonely. They say it's lonely at the top and all of that good stuff like that. Even though you see, people, you may see beyond the veil. You may see angels and ancestors, and and all of these other things. So you may see all of these other things, so to speak. But and you may have like all of these like powerful and amazing, um you may have all of these powerful and all of these amazing, experiences. Sometimes you really don't want to let those people go, but sometimes you have to. It can be beautiful. But now at the point of where I am now, I can let these people go a little faster. And like, when I lose people when I lose people in my life, like when people transition and cross over, however you want to look at that, it's 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 easier for me out, and I can only speak for myself. It's easier for me to be able to handle it. And as of late, I've had some people to transition. And um does it make it make well it like I said, I can handle it that much more easier. It's still difficult some days, but I can, I can make peace with it. I really can make peace with it, because I know, oh cool, for me, I look at it like, okay, cool, well, I have more help on the other side, for people to come in and help me with, my gifts. Like I said, I didn't have a mentor. It would have been nice, if I would have had and in a sense, this is almost in a sense like my therapy, you know. But it would have been nice if I would have had, a mentor, someone to, like a physical, like somebody like, but I had my spirit guides and all of that good stuff. And you know I remember I was on a Facebook Live, and I was just talking to this one particular young lady, and I was telling her, like, I said, I feel your ancestors, like, I feel your ancestors, and they're close by. And okay, oh, okay. Well, yeah, thanks for passing through. And I told her, hey, I feel your ancestors. And let me say this, but let me finish the story. And when I was sitting down, and I turned my head to the left, and I saw these two tall figures standing right next to me. I'm like, man, what? And like, and I'm telling her, it's like, man, you're not gonna believe this, but I see your ancestors, and they're like right next to me. But anyway, and I've seen my ancestors before, like in a doorway, and some people, people say, "Oh, that was a portal," but it's things like that that you experience it, and then it's the people, it's the people that you get to help along the way. And for me, the only thing that I can say is that people may say, "Oh, well, your gifts are," people may look at you and say, "Oh, your gifts are demonic." Well, so I don't look at it like that, because I didn't go. I'll tell people, these are, for me, these things are just natural. It's just like somebody who can draw or sing or dance, or somebody who can play a musical instrument by ear. It's the same thing spiritually. You start to you start to pop up with all of these different gifts, and that is something that is not your fault. Like, seriously, that is not it's not like you um went to the back streets of Calcutta and said, "Oh, magical genie, I want to have these gifts," and then just it just doesn't work like that for a lot of people. It's just like a lot of people just have these gifts from, maybe they awaken when they're younger and they keep going, or some people when they're a little older, like myself, and I've always had different things along the way. So it's powerful, amazing, out of this world. How but you're the one who naturally has to. It's cool to look at somebody else's life and to, like, oh man, I wish I had. But when you get it, could you be able to handle that? And again, having spiritual gifts have driven people into madness, like, literally. And sometimes um the families and the people around them don't help. I remember this young lady, we were cool for, like, man, 15, 16 years, and I just started to just research certain things, because I started to resonate with certain things along, because it's like, when you go to church, it's like, heaven, hell, and they don't tell you about all of these other things. And like, certain things are really real out here, and that's the interesting thing about it, and within that I can say that is not that's just what that is, you know no matter where you go. It's like, no matter where you go, no matter where you always have your gifts. You always have your gifts. You're always protected. You're always protected. And it is, like I said, it is a very beautiful, it is a very powerful, it is a very out of this world thing, to be able to hear people's thoughts, to you know to feel their energy, and to speak to their loved ones that don't hear anymore. It's just, it's amazing. It's almost like stuff that people do. You would believe, like, oh man, that stuff only happens in the movies, but now there are, like, I don't know, there are thousands upon thousands of stories out there. People near death experiences, out of body experiences, and so on and so forth. So yeah, man. But um, If somebody would have told me years ago that my life would be like this and I would, have these extraordinary gifts. And, another thing is, you still have to live a normal life, go to work and, live and all of this stuff like that and be around, you know, that's regular people, and so to speak. But, it's like once you reach a certain level, man, you start to look, breathe, things start to feel different. Really and truly, they really and truly start to feel different. So, you know, so if you come on this and you have these spiritual gifts, just know that you're not alone out there. Just really and truly know that you are not alone. Um, yeah. So, but yeah, just continue to put in the work, get better with what it is that you have been blessed with, because your gifts are a blessing and they're not a curse. But that's pretty much everything that I have for y'all tonight, man. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Again, Soul of a Man. As always, I'm out this. Peace. Peace.